What have you done to my Victoria 3 and why is it all green? Well, we're looking at GDP in the globe. You can see these really dark green areas in China and India, but if you hover over them, you're going to see it's mostly agricultural stuff happening there. This is not industrial output. Yes, it's high GDP, but it's not industrial. What we see over here in Europe is, well, again, mostly in agricultural, or here in Silesia, it's resource extraction. Down here, they have a luxury clothes business going on. Okay. But in the home counties, this is where we see some industry going. In Yorkshire, the tools and steel industry, alone of the European nations, well, sort of alone, Belgium is getting in there, England is industrialized. When I say that, clearly England is not all the same color. And if we hover over other parts of England, we're going to see that they're not doing the same level of industry as Yorkshire and home counties. When we say England is industrialized, we're saying enough of England has industry in it that we're going to call it industrialized, even though there are pockets that are less industrialized or non-industrialized. Certainly when we look at Ireland, this is not an industrialized area. Look at northern Scotland, not industrialized. This is resource extraction country. And this tells the story of industrialization in Europe. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that history. Taking a look at Victoria 3 at the very beginning gives us a pretty good picture of what we think the economic spread in Europe looked like. Now keep in mind, data for 1830 and 1840 in that time period is hard to come by, especially for areas like the Ottoman Empire or Egypt or Russia or even Austria-Hungary and Italy that had very poor record-keeping systems. Now, there are parts of these countries that had good record-keeping systems, and we can work with those, but a lot of them had poor record-keeping systems. We have to guess. And this does look like a really good set of guesses that the developers have latched into, and I'm glad for that. And what we see is that with what we think was going on, that most of Europe was not industrialized. But there were parts of Europe that were ready to industrialize, more so than others in some places. Now, as I talk about Europe, we should also mention America, because New York and Pennsylvania are very much like England. They have some industry in them, but in the South, no, they have high GDP, but it's agricultural extraction there. So you have this industrial center, and then as you move away from it, you have less industrialization, for sure, but you also have conditions that are less ready for industrialization. So what are the conditions ready for industrialization? And I'll give you a hint. It's not a laissez-faire economic policy. Laissez-faire comes about after industrialists get some power because you've industrialized, and they say, we'd like to have more power. Why don't you just let us do whatever we want to do? Laissez-faire means let it happen. And it's very vague, but it means let the business owners do what they plan to do and just turn the other way and let the nation prosper. Don't have the government get involved. Let it happen. Laissez-faire. Which reminds me of an order famously given in the battles for Sevastopol, where a Russian commander ordered, do the thing. And the commanders didn't know, wait, do you mean do the thing where we bombard the enemy, or do the thing where we get out of the trenches and attack the enemy? He just said, do the thing. And so he says, right, we'll do the thing. And he passed the order down to the next commander, says, we've been ordered to do the thing. And they did. It didn't work very well at all. But yes, let it happen. It being the decisions of the industrialists. And that's going to come later. That doesn't happen right away. So even though in my government, I have actually kicked the Junkers out and took a hit of about 50,000 radicals and dropped less than 1,000 loyalists, or not even 50,000, it was 5,000. It was a piddling amount. I brought the industrialists in, and I got a better government number. I went from 65 to 68. My industrialists are going to gain in power, and they're going to push for laissez-faire. Okay, I'm cool with that, man. But, just because I'm role-playing government and stuff. But that's not going to be what drives my economy? What's going to drive my economy, number one, is education. I've got the schools. Universities are going to help, but education is going to improve literacy and help get my people to where they're ready to get off the farms and get onto the factory floors, or at least stop being peasants. So that's number one. And number two is something I also have. We got to go back to the policy, to the laws there. If we look at my land reform, I may have tenant farmers, which gives a lot of power to the landowners, but I don't have serfdom. Serfdom will prevent you from having a school system. It will also prevent you from having a professional army. It's horrific. The nations that didn't have serfdom, even it doesn't matter, they didn't have to have homesteading or collectivized agricultural or commercialized agriculture or anything like that. They just had to not have serfdom. And that describes France and Germany's, northern Italy, parts of Austria. They don't have serfdom. They don't have really poor conditions for the peasantry, but other parts of Europe have serfdom or really terrible conditions for the peasants. And that ties them to the land more. This is why Russia, which has access to resources the same as England, doesn't industrialize that much. They don't have a good education system. They have no education system, so they don't have a good one. They've got serfdom. And the rest of Europe, well, to varying degrees, has better conditions for industrialization, except the Ottoman Empire, which is even worse off than Russia is. And when we look at these nations, we can see how Austria here in the West it already has more industrial activity. It's going to industrialize more so than the rest of Austria. This part of England is going to industrialize more than Wales or Ireland part of England. We're going to see islands of industrialization grow and then spread out. That will cover all of a nation for the ones in these regions. And we're just going to see the islands alone happen in Russia. This is over the next 70 years, between now and 1910. Ottoman Empire never industrializes. Now, the final piece that we can do for industrialization is to get access to other markets. As a great power, I'm not going to join someone else's market, but I do want to have participants in my market, and I want to have beneficial trade relationships between my market and other markets. This is going to help grow the GDP of my country. Now, I'm not talking about whether it's going to be proportional growth across my entire population or be concentrated among the rich. We know what's going to happen. It's going to be concentrated among the rich, but that is also something where even the poor people in my country are going to have a higher standard of living than the poor people in, say, Russia or Ottoman Empire. They may still be poor relative to the rich, but they're going to have a lot more stuff. And we'll worry about labor movements and things like that when we get to those in the late 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, around that time frame. That's when we're going to see a labor movement start to kick off. But to get that labor movement, we've got to industrialize. And to industrialize, we need to have policies that are beneficial for the development of industry. And yes, laissez-faire is a policy that does develop industry, but it's not the only one. Your schools are needed, and your peasantry needs to be free. And then you get the trade deals with other nations, and that will put you on a path towards more industrialization. The information I'm getting is coming. I have a book that I got recently. Let me look up the name of it here, but it's about the industrialization of Europe. It's a fascinating one there. Here it is. Yeah, An Economic History of 19th-Century Europe, Diversity and Industrialization. And the author's name, let me pull it up here. Come on. The author's name is Ivan Berend. Ivan Berend. And I'll put the title and stuff for it in the description below, and you'll be able to find it if you're interested. But An Economic History of 19th-Century Europe. It really interesting book that I've just started on it. And in the introduction, he addresses this history of of industrialization, and this map shows the start of that. What we want to do as we keep playing is take a look at not just how green my zones are, but then what's contributing to that green. And we want to see industries at the top, and then we'll know we're making the stuff. We're building the stuff that powers the economy and drives it forward. If we see grain and wood and iron and coal, then we know this is just resource extraction. The industrialization is happening somewhere else. Well, I hope this is interesting for you and that it gives you some insight into how you play Victoria 3, and especially if you're playing a smaller country. A smaller country that's away from this British center. If you're playing Belgium, you're ready to industrialize. If you're playing Wallachia or Persia, you now know what hills you must climb if you want to industrialize. Building the factories is nice, but getting the peasantry free, getting the education level up, that's what you need to do. In fact, let's take a look at Persia, their domestic situation. They have got tenant farmers, so that's good for them. They have education level 1 because they have religious schools. Well, that's good. That's actually more than what the Russians have. I go over here to the Russian Empire. They have serfdom and no schools. Conceivably, you could industrialize faster as Persia than you could as Russia because you've got the capability there with your school system. Something to think about, and you still have access to resources there. Okay, well, you do have the traditionalist economic system. Oh, whoops. Well, that's going to mess things up. You need to get out of that. All right, I may have spoke too soon about Persia, but definitely you can see what hills you have to climb if you're playing a non-industrial nation that's far away from England. You've got these concerns that you have to deal with. If you're playing Greece, for example, oh boy, yeah, Greece here, the Peloponnese, they've got iron and logs. There's no coal there. We've got sulfur, but no coal. So Greece, you're going to need to get some coal, and I don't see it anywhere here. That's wow. There is there coal over here? Okay, so yeah, if you're Greece, you're going to have to you're going to have to reform the Byzantine Empire in order to get coal, it looks like. Oy, that's a tough one there. You'll be trading for it, and it'll be very difficult to industrialize if you lack those raw materials that you can get for yourself. You can still do it, but it's going to be tough. And if you're playing a great power in Europe, the closer you are to England, the faster you could industrialize if you work at it. So yes, laissez-faire absolutely is an economic policy that will get you to industrialize faster. But before you get to laissez-faire, you've got to get your schools, you've got to get your peasants free, and you need to work on those trade deals. I hope you've enjoyed this, and now I will end this video, and I will see you in the next one when I unpause and do some damage as Germany. So like, comment, subscribe. Have a great day. We'll see you later.